All right, welcome back to Waste Some Time with Jason Green. I am Jason Green, bringing you brand new interviews on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe. We're almost at 10,000. I think we're like 100 away. By the time this interview ends, we'll be past 10,000 subscribers and 1 million viewers in just a year. How amazing. So make sure you do that. Check out the Patreon link in the description if you want to ask questions of our guests. And one of our Patrons has a great question for today's guest. And today's guest, what a segue. Albert Bouchard is here. I got to tell you, when I spoke to musicians, they were so excited to hear that Albert was going to be on. He is a musician, certainly love him and his work. And he might be best known for his time with Blue Oyster Cult, obviously, but he's currently playing with one of the greatest New York punk bands of all time, the Dictators. And we're going to talk about all those things. And, you know, I think people know Albert as a drummer, but he's also a singer, songwriter, guitar player. He does it all. But he for the rest of his life, he will probably be known as the most famous cowbell player in history. It's not a bad thing to be known for. I look forward to talking to a fellow New Yorker right after this. Just wanna waste some time with you. Sometimes it seems too good to be true. Nobody out there can waste time with you. All right, please welcome Albert Bouchard. Hi, Albert.
Hello.
I'm glad you're here. I think this will be a lot of fun. Like I said, I love talking to fellow New Yorkers. And you're in New York City right now, right?
Yeah. Yep. Up on 100th Street.
Nice. You do. I see you. I'll mention right off the bat, you have a very cool YouTube channel and you answer questions and there's all kinds of fun stuff. And sometimes you film outside. Is it Grant's Tomb where you're filming? What is that location where?
I haven't done that yet. No, there is a Fireman's Memorial.
Fireman's Memorial.
Been there since, I don't know, like beginning of the 20th century. Mm-hmm. It's been there for quite a while. And every year on 9/11, all the firemen in the city, you know, you better hope there's not a fire that day because they're all right outside my house.
Yeah, I've passed it a million times. Yeah, I went to high school not too far from there, and I've seen it a million times. And it's also, you see it in the new Dictators video. Let's get the band back together.
Yeah.
Which is really fun, which we'll get to. We've got so much to talk about. Like I said, everyone was really excited that you were here. So, and I said to you, you know, you're going to get the same questions you've heard a million times, but it's funny how many people are exposed to your music at different times. You know, Blue Oyster Cult especially. It's such an odd band. I see Blue Oyster Cult playing on these heavy metal festivals, these doom metal festivals. And so you got these prog fans, and then you've got these metal fans. Of course, you have the classic rock fans. And then you have the sort of 80s hair metal bands. That audience loves it too. And you could have no idea that back in 1967, when it was Soft White Underbelly, that this was going to be something you were talking about more than 50 years later. So take me back to the beginning.
Oh, well, so I learned how to play piano first, took piano lessons as a kid. And then I think right about the end of when I was like, I've had it with the piano, you can't make me play it. I really despise playing it after a while. And although I'm very happy now because I wrote astronomy on piano. I wrote a lot of songs on piano. So it's been a great songwriting tool for me to be able to know how to do it. And also in those 30 years that I sort of semi-retired from the music business and was a music teacher, what I taught mostly was piano. So, because kids really want to know how to play the piano these days. Guitar has kind of gone out of favor, and in its place is the keyboard, so it's really big. If you want to make modern music, and we're talking like, from whoever, Phineas, and Phineas Eilish, all of these guys, they play piano. they make their music on the piano mostly. I mean, she's got her little ukulele there, but whatever.
Yeah.
But so anyway, you know, and all the rappers, they all, you know, they all have a keyboard. You know, who was the guy? A Boogie in the hoodie. You heard of him, and maybe you probably haven't, but you know or even Kanye West with John Legend. You know, I mean, if he hadn't had an amazing keyboard player making his tracks, who you wouldn't know. He would have been unknown. You know, not really a great rapper. You know, but his tracks are popping. You know, so anyway.
People had no idea they were going to hear Albert Bouchard talk about Kanye West and the Boogie and the Hoodie guy. This is they didn't know that you're quite hip.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was a teacher for 31 years, so it was a big, I mean, I still played music. You know, I didn't retire per se, but I just kind of, it became more of a hobby thing for me, and I would tour in the summertime when I had 10 weeks of vacation. I would go out and do a little tour, and play around. But most of the time it was getting up with the alarm clock and going to the school and all that. But anyway, so I played piano, and then finally I convinced my mother or my parents. My dad really didn't care. It was my mother. So, but I convinced her that I could play the drums in the elementary school band. So that's where I started playing the drums, seriously. And then I played the drums in high school, and we had a little band with my cousin and my brother, and I played the drums there. And then I got into a very good engineering school. So I said, well, even though my test scores were really high, but my grades in school were not great. I mean, they were okay, but I knew that if I didn't hit the books every night, I was going to flunk out of college. So I left my drums at home. I said, "This is it." I'm not going to sell them because I might, come back in the summer and play with a band, or have the hobby thing going, and then I went to college and I met this guy, Don Roser, and his friend Bruce Abbott. Bruce was in all my classes. So, and we were talking, and I told him that, I played in a band in high school and all this other stuff. And so he decided that we should have a band. And I'm like, well, I don't have my drums here. I don't want to. And so they, oh, come on. So I ended up bringing my drums to school.
Was this Stony Brook?
No, this is Clarkson College of Technology. Now Clarkson University, yeah.
Okay.
Potsdam. So I brought the drums up there, and we started playing, and it was pretty, I mean, I didn't flunk out right away. No, I never flunked out, but I did drop out eventually because the band, the college band, it started out really terrible. Like we were just the worst. We were the worst band. And then the second year we started. I'd flunked a class. I had flunked a class, and I'd gone to summer school. And while I was in summer school, I got a letter from Don Roser, who was back in New York City, and he said, "Hey, I found this fantastic band called the Blues Project, and they play the blues, but it's different, and this is really, this is the future of music." I'm like, "Really?" Yeah, he says, "So we should play some blues when we come back in our band." I said, "Okay." So we ended up becoming like a Blues Project tribute band. And got extremely popular. I mean, we were turning down shows. We kept raising our price higher and higher, and they would pay whatever we asked. They would pay. I think we were at the end. We were getting $500 a show, and we were doing 2 shows every week. That's $1,000. Back in 1967.
Yeah.
So. for a band to be making $1,000 a week and for 2 shows, that was a lot. So we were like, screw this school thing. And we said, we're going to drop out, and not everybody wanted to do it. Don wanted to become a professional musician. I wanted to badly. And my friend Jeff Latham from Chicago, he wanted to do it too. He was like, screw this, all this other stuff. Let's just play music. So, so the 3 of us determined to drop out. One of the guys had to go to summer school, so he couldn't play with us. And the other guy, the singer, who didn't want to drop out, he was like, well, I'll sing with you for the summer, until you get another singer, or if you guys want to sing, he was a fantastic singer. Anyway, we couldn't get any gigs. We went from $500 a night to $15 a night.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was like, crushing. So we broke up. We went our separate ways, and I went back to Clayton, New York, in the Thousand Islands, where I grew up, and I got a job as a carpenter.
Okay.
Building a restaurant. And that area is a very big tourist area, the Thousand Islands. It's where a lot of fishermen go there, rich people. Back in the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, in the early 1900s, people from New York City would come up there. The Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and all of these very rich people would come up, and they would build mansions on these little islands in the middle of the St. Lawrence River. And so there was a big, every summer, the population would swell, 10 times the size. And even after air conditioning was invented and people from the city didn't come up, they didn't have to get away from the heat so much.
Right.
It still was people from Rochester or Syracuse or, Albany. They would all come up there to fish or to relax or whatever. So there was a big music scene. There was a good, a lot of places to play. It was really wonderful. And so I was building this restaurant, which the very next year, when I was in Soft Rod Underbelly, my brother Joe was playing at the restaurant that I built. But anyway, so I got an offer to play in a band in Chicago. So I moved to Chicago, and then I got another message from Don Roser saying, I met this guy who writes for that terrible magazine that we saw called Crawdaddy, but he seems like a cool guy. His name is Sandy Pearlman, and he says he's going to make me a star. And so I called him up. I said, what's the deal with this guy? And he's like, well, he seems to be interested in all that. And I said, well, how many times have we heard make you a star? We heard that all the time when we were playing the fraternity parties. They're like, oh yeah, you guys, you're going to be stars. My cousin, he's the manager, and all this stuff. And you hear this all the time. Even now, people will come up and give you a line, and you're like, yeah, okay. I got a manager, all right. So anyway, so he came out to Chicago, and I said, take me back. I want to meet this guy, Sandy Pearlman, and see what can happen, He says, well, we already got a drummer. I said, well, I'll play guitar or harmonica. And he's like, well, I don't know if we need. I said, well, just take me back. I wouldn't meet this cat, and we'll see what happens. I don't have to play with you, but I need to ride back to New York. This is not working out for me in Chicago. I was like basically selling pot and asking my parents to support me when I didn't sell enough, which was like all the time.
Right. You were a better drummer than a weed dealer.
Oh, yeah. No, I was terrible. I would give it away. It was like, oh, you didn't like it? Okay, well, I'll give you, how about if I give you half your money back? I mean, I was a terrible dealer.
Wasn't your career? Yeah.
I was getting high on my own supply too, so that was bad as well.
Mhm.
I broke every rule. So when I came back and I met Sandy Pearlman, and Sandy's like, you got to be the drummer in the band because that other guy, he's not, I don't know. He really liked me, and I liked him too. So I ended up being the drummer of the band, and that's basically how it started.
Yeah. Sandy Pearlman has a lot of there's a lot of your career and your life where there's a Sandy Pearlman is involved in one way or another, and it's funny because we'll get to it later. But we'll talk about the Dictators. I had Ross the Boss on the show, and when he mentioned that you were playing with them, I was so excited, and I didn't get the connection right away. But Sandy Pearlman managed Blue Oyster Cult, and he also managed the Dictators, among other acts, and it was sort of, you guys appeared on all of these bills together. Yeah, I'm jumping ahead, but but Sandy Pearlman also, and we'll get to it, but he, his poetry also inspired so much music of yours. And so anyway, Sandy Pearlman is a really big part of the beginning. He comes up with the name Soft White Underbelly. Winston Churchill, World War One quote. At some point, we're going to change that name. So tell me how that comes about.
Okay, so we started this band, Don and me and a couple other guys, and actually a bunch of one time there was like 7 people in the band. It was like we had a cello player and a guy played sax, and we had I think it was when Alan came back. Alan Lanier was in the band in the very beginning, and then he got drafted and he went in the Army. And so we got Jeff from the college band, Jeff Latham, came and replaced Alan. And then Jackson Brown came, and he was going to be our singer. So that we had all these people, and then Jeff Richards was playing the saxophone and Mike Witzel was playing the cello. So we had this huge band, and it was too, I think everybody but Andy, the bass player, Alan, myself, and Don, they all left. So then it was just the 4 of us. And then Jeff Richards became the singer instead of the sax player. And we played some high profile gigs in the city. And
what were the venues in the city at the time?
The Anderson Theater was the main one. I mean, we played at Cafe Go-Go, and we played at Steve Paul Scene, and we played at this Generation place that became Electric Ladyland.
Wow. So Electric Ladyland was a club before that. I didn't realize.
Yeah. It was called Generation. And we played the second week that it was open, and Chuck Berry was the headliner, and we were his backup band. And
great.
And B.B. King was the opener.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was incredible. It really
in a building that would later be owned by Jimi Hendrix. Talk about the history that happens there.
Yeah.
Incredible. Humble beginnings, at the time. Oh yeah, B.B. King's opening, and Jackson Brown wants to be our singer, and it's amazing. I don't know if in this day and age names will roll off the tongue like that 40, 50 years from now. We're talking about some big legends.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, we played around, and eventually Jeff Richards left, even though he was a great singer, but he had stage fright, and he was he didn't know how to work a crowd at all. He'd never been in a band before. He'd never played any gigs. He sang in the choir, in his church, that was it. So, and in his high school. So we got Les Brunstein as a singer. Les was fantastic, great singer, perfect pitch, really knew how to work a crowd. He really had charisma. And with Les, we got through that. He also could he didn't sound like Jim Morrison, but he kind of had that that feel like Jim Morrison. You know, I mean, there was something about it that was, you know, that he was a little bit unpredictable, that he was poetic, that he would just go on a rant, you know, so it was really quite a good thing. I thought, you know, that, you know, it was a fantastic band, and
you get signed to a lecturer with him, right?
Yeah, Jack Holzman saw us and signed us right there, you know, I mean, within a week. So this is at the end of 1968. And so we started making a record for him that winter and with Les, and it went on. It seemed like it was taking a long time. It probably was only a few months, but, you know, we kept working on it. And that spring, Les, we had played a gig, and after the gig, Les said, I'm not coming back to work on the record anymore. I can't get behind this music. It's just, I mean, if you guys want to back me up on my thing, but I can't play this music. And we'd already recorded the tracks. We've been working on them for months. Yeah. And he decides that I can't do this. And so we said, well, you know, we're not giving up on these songs. We already recorded them. So,
that record was in shelved for a lot of years, right?
It's never come out.
It's not available at all.
No. And I have no idea what the tapes are or what, you know, you can hear it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. You know, some people have got, you know, we had like, I guess some acetates or something. And so we had like little rough mixes and stuff of the songs, but, you know, not all of them. Some of them have never appeared anywhere. So
I think there's some bootlegs then, like I think it's called the Electro recordings. Yeah,
about 6 songs or so that have appeared in different places. And
whatever happened to Les?
He ended up being he did a lot of different things. The first thing he did was he went to the Middle East, and he I think he flew to Germany, and he went somehow through Germany down through Turkey and into Afghanistan, and then came back, back through Europe to the United States. So he had a year-long adventure, as a ragamuffin. He'd work as a cook or a waiter or, different odd jobs, to get through. And I think he had some money. He had written a song for Peter, Paul, and Mary. Wow. And which was the flip side of leaving on a jet plane. So, yeah, he made some money. It was on one of their, I think their first platinum record. So he had money but he also, he just was like free and easy guy. He wanted to go, and he didn't want to be stuck with this band. I think, I don't really know why. I mean, he doesn't seem to have any regrets. He came back and he was a chef for a while, and then he ended up moving to Woodstock and becoming a real estate agent. And so,
well, it might have worked out good for everybody, but for you, it's one of the best things that could happen, because who knows where it would have went,
Yeah, well, who knows? I mean, if Jackson Browne had stuck with us, mean, we didn't ask him to leave. He was like, I just don't get what you guys are doing. I'm not that good. He says, I can't really hang with you guys. You're talking a different language.
You guys were certainly, now the word would be progressive, but it was definitely, you guys weren't playing typical, pop songs, to say the least.
That was kind of one of our tenets, that we would not we would never have a follow-up single if we ever had a hit. We would never do that. It would have to just happen by itself, by accident, so, but of course, then that's what you say when you don't have any hits.
Mhm. Yeah, things certainly changed after you had you have a
You
few.
have a hit, then it's like it fucks with your mind.
Mhm.
It certainly does. So, I mean, you see all these groups, they've been together for 20 years and they finally have a hit record and they break up.
Yeah, it's a funny business.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
okay, so let's move ahead. So Les is gone. The big year for the band is 1971. This is really the year for you guys.
Well, so, here's what happened. So this is in 69, in the spring of 69, Les leaves. We get Eric Bloom as the lead singer. Eric was a singer at Hobart, and I knew about his band. I'd never heard his band, but I played with in one of the bands that I played with in the summer when I was in college. They were it was there was a guy named Peter Haviland, and he said, "Oh, this band is good, but you should hear the band that I have at Hobart. They are fantastic. We're called the Lost and Found." So I was like, "Okay, that I had never heard them, and at that point they had never played up in the Thousand Islands. I think after I when I was in Clarkson." They had come to the Thousand Islands, and my brother Joe saw them play with Eric Bloom. So Joe already knew Eric Bloom, but when I met Eric Bloom, Joe was still going to college. My younger brother Joe, so he ended up getting his college degree.
He followed through.
He went 4 years and he got it. Me, I went 2 years and then I went 3 years. 20 years later.
You got there. He probably kept your parents happy for a little while.
Yeah. Oh my God, my parents thought I had lost my freaking mind because I had a full scholarship to college. I didn't pay.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like throwing money away.
And you chose rock and roll.
Yeah, I was like, no, I got to do this.
Now you were talking about Don earlier, but we didn't say. Some people might not know who that is.
Well, yeah, his stage name is Buck Dharma, and he's still playing with Blue Oyster Cult.
Right.
And that name was given to him by Sandy Pearlman. Sandy gave everybody in the band nicknames, well, except for Joe. He said, "No, Joe's got a good name. Joe Bouchard, that sounds good." So
I've heard some of these nicknames, so you got to tell us. Alan Laniers is bizarre. Was he Laverne?
Yes, Laverne. That was going to be his nickname. And Eric Bloom was Jesse Python.
Jesse Python. Yeah, I've heard that one.
I hate that. And I'm like, what? I'll take that one, Jesse Python. But it should be a lead singer. It's got to be the lead singer if it's Jesse Python,
What did you get?
I was Prince Omega.
Prince Omega. How could I forget? Yeah.
Yeah, I like that too, but nobody they're like, we're not going to call you Prince. Nah.
It didn't stick. Yeah.
It didn't stick. But, who knew, years later, Prince would make
He did okay with it.
Yeah.
He did okay with it. But so at this point now we're talking about,
it was about, yeah. So this was 69. And so we said to Elektra, Les is left, but we've got this new guy. He's really great. And so they said, well, we've got to hear him. Can you arrange a gig? So we got a gig at a place called the Electric Circus, which was, I think it was an Andy Warhol thing at one time. Maybe I can't remember what he called it, but it was Andy Warhol place, and it was on 8th Street. And
on the east or the west?
East
side. Okay.
Yeah. It was right. It was like almost across from where Trash and Vaudeville used to be.
Right. So St. Mark's Place.
Yeah, St. Mark's Place. It was right on there. And so we played there, and they said, well, we think that Eric Bloom's guitar playing adds a lot to the band, but we think you still need a new lead singer. So we said, well, come and see our next gig. We're gonna work. He's just starting. He doesn't really know the songs yet. So give him a chance. So the next gig we had, which was about 2 weeks later, actually it was, yeah, about 2 weeks later, we played at the Fillmore East. And it was a terrible gig. We just stunk. We couldn't, it seemed like there was a lot of mistakes and it didn't sound good and we couldn't hear each other. And Eric was kind of freaking out because the band wasn't really, it was a bad gig. It was so bad that we decided we had to change our name. So
that's pretty bad, yeah.
Yeah, because we didn't.
But it's for the best, I think.
Yeah. So we had a bunch of, we were trying to come up with different names, and Sandy said, "Well, I like Stock Forest Group," so he said, "Okay, we'll try that for a while." So we were Stock Forest for a little while, and then we were like, I don't know, I think Elektra had put out a single with less singing. That had to be the next year, 1971. Yeah. No, it would have to be, 69. So we made the record. Well, we didn't make the record. We had to talk them into letting us make it. And so in the winter of 1970, we went to Elektra West, to the studios in LA where the Doors recorded, and we recorded a record there. That's the one that was in the can that came out later. So,
okay, gotcha. So there was 2 records. Okay, I understand now. Yeah, so that's the record that was called the Electra Recordings.
Yeah.
Saint Cecilia's.
Cecilia and all these other songs, and it was a pretty good record, I think. I mean, we had a great engineer, the guy who did Chicago, Brian Ross Meyering. He's a producer actually, but he engineered for us. They talked him into doing it, and he got a great sound for us, and for one reason or another, we kept having problems, with the record label. The bass player, we came up. The first thing that happened was, so we finished this record, right? It's in the can. We've got all the things, and so we go up to Elektra and they're showing us the idea that they want to use for the cover, and Bill Harvey, the head of the art department at Elektra, says, "This doesn't have to be your typical Elektra album cover. We're thinking about doing something quite a bit different." And Andy Winters says, kind of innocently, "Oh, that's good." And Bill Harvey is kind of, "Okay, so here it is." And he shows it to us. He said, "Okay, very good. We love it." We go back upstairs, and Peter Siegel, who was our producer, says, "What the hell just happened? Jack called and said you're off the label." We're like, "Oh, you think it was when Andy said that's good?" He had a way of sounding sarcastic even when he wasn't. So we had to go back to Bill and say, "Listen, no, we didn't mean any offense. We're happy that, you're making something special for us. I mean, that's all
Right.
it's supposed to be, So we got out of that one. But then nothing happened, so, all of 1970, were, there was nothing happened. We made the record like in February, and then we met with them in like March about the cover, and then April, May, June, July. Now we have no money, we have no gigs. We're like, and so Donald, Eric, and myself went back up to the Thousand Islands, and we started getting gigs up there because everybody knew me. So, and the other guys that were in my high school band, they were still playing. So we joined up with them, and we started playing. We played at Fort Drum, the Army base there. That was mainly what we did. We got a gig playing outside the fort, and a lot of soldiers, a lot of GIs, and then I get a call from Sandy Pearlman, and he says, "What the heck? What are you guys doing, man? Don Gallucci has been here. He's in New York City, and he's gonna help you produce a single for the record because they need a single before we can put it out." We're like, "Oh crap! Okay, guys, you're gonna have to find somebody else because we got to go back." So we went back to New York City. And we met Don Gallucci, and our bass player Andy hadn't gone with us, so he was there at the house. So we got together in our basement, and Don Gallucci was there. And Don Gallucci said, "Well, what do you?" He said, "I've heard your songs. I think this song could be a single, but you've got to change the arrangement a little bit. It's not catchy enough." So we start playing, and within half an hour, the bass player, Andy, says, "Hey, I gotta go. I'm sorry, but I got a job, and it's my first day, and I don't want to get fired on my first day." And we're like, "But Andy, I mean, the guy is here. He's been waiting for days to." He's like, "Well, I can't help it. I gotta go." So he left. So Don Gallucci's like, and Don Gallucci, it's not a common name. He was a producer, but before that, he was the youngest member of a band called the Kingsmen, and he played keyboards. So on Louie, when you hear and then the chaos comes down. But he was the keyboard player. So he says, "Well, I play bass too." He was also in Donna and the Good Times, which was the house band for Shindig or Hullabaloo. Right. I don't know, one of those shows. Yeah. So so Andy leaves. Don Gallucci picks up the bass. He starts playing some like fancy stuff, and we're like, "Oh, cool! Yeah, this is sounding good, man." He goes, "Okay, I'll see you guys." We worked about 3 or 4 hours, and then he said, "Okay, I'm going back. I got a dinner date tonight, so I'll see you later." So he leaves. He's supposed to come back the next day. We never, to this day, have not seen him again. He never came back. It turned out that his dinner date, he was going to see this other group called Iggy and the Stooges. So and I think the next day, instead of coming back, he started recording Raw Power with them.
Incredible. Yeah. What? Yeah.
So that's what happened. He made the right choice for him.
Yeah, and so is the beginning of punk rock coming from there. You guys are a different direction, but
yeah.
So so it's funny how many people are coming and going. Is this the point where your brother was he playing bass?
He played bass in college. And I knew he had a bass because I'd gone to see his band. They were like Sergio Mendes. They did like Latin, smooth Latin pop.
Mm-hmm.
So he was the bass player. Because they didn't need the guitar player was the leader, but he was also in class with my brother and said, "Hey man, you want to play bass in this group?" So he had bought a bass and was playing these Brazil 66 type songs. And so I asked him if he would come, because he had graduated from college and he had a internship as a music teacher in some school upstate, some little tiny, 100 person school or something. I don't know exactly what he was doing, but when I said, well, we need our bass player he's a liability. He's just, he's a little bit hard to work with. And I think the band would really benefit from you being in it. So he said, okay, sure. And he came down. The day he got there was the day that we got the letter from Elektra saying, you're dropped from the label. Because Sandy
nowadays you could get a text message or a Zoom meeting, but back then you had to wait for a letter to come.
We got a letter that we were no longer on Elektra, and so that started a whole like auditioning, new rounds of auditioning, all the same, people that we'd gone to before we went back to, and then we got I'd say, it had to be about 6 months later. I think maybe in March or April of 71, we found out that a Stony Brook student, a guy who'd actually jammed with us right in the Softwood Underbelly days, Murray Krugman, he was a guitar player, and he was like a folk guy, but he got a job as A&R for Columbia Records. Mm-hmm. And he seemed to be he knew everybody there, and he was able to talk people into things. So he said, if you let me co-produce you, co-produce, co-manage you, and help form your image with Sandy, then I guarantee we can get you a deal. So we started retooling our original songs to be much heavier, which was, what Eric Bloom had been saying since he joined the band. It was like, you guys are playing this lightweight stuff, man. We could be a really great heavy band. So between Eric and Murray Krugman, we kind of changed our direction to be a bit heavier. And we played for Clive Davis, and he signed us. So, and at that time, we were in between like Oaxaca and Struck Forest Group, but none of us really liked Struck Forest Group. And Oaxaca was, not, didn't sound heavy enough, know. So, we had all these funny. Richard Meltzer thought we should be called Cow.
I couldn't imagine that now, talking about the great band Cow.
Yeah. Cow. Yeah. And I like the knife-wielding Scumbags. That was my favorite.
Like that too. I'm not sure it would have had the same longevity, but
yeah, but it was heavy.
It's heavy.
I think at that point I was really into Zap Comics.
Mm-hmm. And, sure.
And Spain, with the was it Captain Pissgums and all of that? Yeah.
Yeah, the underground comics, that's going way back, yeah.
So and I don't remember all the other ones, but they were pretty bad. And so it was the day we were signing the contract, and Sandy said, we need a name for the band on the contract. You can't just say these guys, and so we said, well, we can't decide. We've been fighting for a month over the name, and there's no, we can't come to any kind of, even a majority on a name. It seemed like, every name had, some people that were like most people didn't. 3 out of 5 didn't like it.
Yeah, you couldn't get any.
So Sandy and Murray went into a room, and they came out like 50 seconds later, laughing and going, "Okay, we got it. Blue Oyster Cult." We're like, "No!" And they said, "Listen, you guys said, whatever you come out with." And I said, "Well, we did say that. Okay, fine, whatever, So that's how we got Blue Oyster Cult. Well, we knew that we were familiar with that because Sandy had given us the lyrics to the song called Blue Oyster Cult.
It was one of his poems, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was like a
pretty
lot of
amazing.
words. Yeah, and eventually Eric took out about half the words and made it into the song called Subhuman.
Mhm.
We didn't want to call it Blue Oyster Cult because we didn't want it to be like this is what we are all about, even
Right.
though it's pretty hard to figure out what that song is all about anyway. It's got a lot of information packed in there.
But it's interesting that that's where the band name comes from, and that the band name was under your nose all this time.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
But obviously you guys made the right choice. You get to work on that record. 72 is when the debut album comes out. This
Yeah.
brings me to a question from one of our Patreons, Joe Diaz, and he asks, "What happened to the artist Bill Golick?" And I looked online, and this is quite a popular question that I haven't seen anybody answer. He did the artwork for the first two, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, he did. And I don't know. The last person that I know who saw him was my brother Joe, who had hailed a cab in New York City, a yellow cab, and Bill Golick was driving the cab.
Incredible. What year do you think that is?
Oh, it was probably, well, it was well before Don't Fear the Reaper. So it had to be like 74 or 75, or maybe no, because he was still working on, after Tyranny and Mutation, that that album title came from Sandy he was describing how it was to work with Bill Golick. Or maybe it was Bill Golick describing how it was to work with Sandy. I don't remember. One of them said it.
Mm-hmm. Either way, it's funny. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, because that's really what I think Bill and Sandy both felt about each other. It's like, oh my God, this guy is. So Sandy didn't want to use him for the third one, which is kind of too bad because he was great. He was great.
Yeah, and legendary. Those covers have become legendary. It's interesting in a time when we can find anybody online. It seems like good luck finding Bill. It seems like he's probably not with us.
I think that he probably. I mean, he also showed Joe the gun that he had with him in the car.
Mm-hmm. It's like Taxi Driver,
Yeah. Like the movie Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, he did it. Albert did his best to answer your question. It's a question that no one is able to answer, but we did get a really cool story out of it. It's interesting in your life. Sometimes when you see people for the last time, like Don Gallucci, that's it. They go on to do something, and that's the one last time. And it's definitely an interesting.
Yeah. I think he's still alive. I mean, we're almost the same age, so he was just a teenager when he cut Louie. Yeah. I think he was not old enough to play in the clubs. He had to get permission. They had to get permission from his parents.
How funny, and he's kind of a big shot, at such a young age. It's a funny thing. At this time, you guys are working with Patti Smith a little bit too, right?
Yeah. Well, I remember when Sandy first discovered her, he was all excited, and he brought one of her books there, and I think I met her too. I met her at some point, and I was very impressed. I thought that she was amazing looking and unique, and her lyrics were like really cool. I mean, her poetry, actually, it wasn't lyrics at that point. But I was like, yeah, she can write. Wow, she's got such an imagination, and also a way with words, that helps a lot, when you're trying to write a song. So I was fascinated because words were never my thing, in the beginning when I was a kid. I did really, my mother read a lot, and she really emphasized the importance of reading, but I was not a big reader. I only liked sci-fi. That was it.
Mhm.
That was it. Nothing else.
It's yeah, she definitely, people use the term ahead of their time a lot, but this is definitely somebody
Yeah.
who was on a different level and a true New Yorker as well. She's still in New York. When I lived in New York, you would often see, Patti Smith walking up the street, and if you knew, or Joey Ramone or whoever, that was that time in New York City. But so I'm going to jump ahead a little bit so I don't keep you all day. Obviously, everybody, it's the fourth record where things really go crazy. Agents of Fortune, this is one of the most legendary records now. And of course, this is Don't Fear the Reaper. Now, you said earlier, we were talking about singles. I've heard you say in the past that you kind of knew you had a single with this one.
Yeah. I just want to step back a little bit because it was our fourth studio record, but the actual fourth record was a live record called On Your Feet or On Your Knees.
Gotcha.
And after, because when we made Secret Treaties, even though the public really liked it, nobody in the band really liked it.
Interesting.
The reason why we didn't like it was not because it wasn't a good record, but it was how amazing it sounded in the studio. And then when we heard the final product, we were so disappointed. We were on the road when it got mixed. So we said, when they wanted to put out the live record, we said, well, we want this to sound competitive. We want it to sound as good as Aerosmith, who was, kind of our competitors. And we had played with them live, and we knew they didn't sound any better than us live. They sounded worse. They were not as good as us live, but the record sounded better. And so we said, Sandy, you're a brilliant guy, but we need a real engineer to engineer this, not just some guy that will do anything you ask him to. Look at John Landau and MC5. He made the worst records with them. Finally, by the time, he got the same idea for Bruce. Instead of using some little studio in New Jersey, let's put him in the same place that Aerosmith records.
Right.
Aerosmith had they had the sound. And who was behind that? Jack Douglas.
Jack Douglas, yeah.
And so when we put out On Your Feet or On Your Knees, our live record, we asked Jack to mix it. And he did an absolutely brilliant mix of it. It was our first gold record. So it seems like, we just burst down with Reaper, but we had a gold record before that.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting.
Columbia was willing to pay whatever it took to record us properly. And so we went to Jack's studio, which was the record plant. And of course, Jack was busy, but he said, well, you've got to try this guy. And we're like, that guy? He was sweeping the floor when we did the record with Les Brunstein. And but he had turned into an expert mixer, and Shelly Yakis, and we had Shelly, and then so we were going to go in there, and I think it was in the fall of I know it was the fall of '75. We had a few weeks off to make some demos and write songs, and so it all came back. I had about 10, 12 songs. And Joe had about 8 songs, and Eric had 1, and Alan had a couple, and Buck Dharma had 1 song, just 1, and it was Don't Fear the Reaper. And we're like, whoa, well, that's quite a great song to have. So
it's so funny how you hear those stories. Just the one. And the one was all he needed, but it's so amazing.
Yeah, it was amazing. So, so that was, I knew it was a hit. I thought it was a hit. When I heard it, I got this feeling, just kind of like goosebumpy feeling, that, a really great song will do to you. And but I didn't know, maybe it was me, maybe I just really wanted it to be a hit, and so I was looking for anything that we could, because we were tired of being the opening act all the time. We wanted to be able to headline, and to play longer, play more songs. Opening act, you get like half an hour or 45 minutes, that's it. Hit them and quit them. So so we really wanted to we'd seen what happens when you have a gold record. We wanted more. So Donald had given me a cassette tape. We were going to Seattle. We were playing a group. There was 3 theaters called the Paramount. There were in Paramount Seattle, Paramount Portland, Paramount somewhere else, I think Medford or something like that. But anyway, so we were playing these Paramount theaters, very nice theaters, and we'd played there before, and I had a girl that I was seeing, my girlfriend, and so I brought the cassette and I played it for her. I said, "What do you think?" And I'm playing it for her, and she starts crying. I'm like, "What's the matter?" She goes, "Are you breaking up with me?" I said, "Why?" Well, she said, "Well, our times are gone." And I said, "No, that's Don. Don wrote that."
Yeah, he's breaking up with somebody, not me.
Yeah, not me. And it wasn't even about that. It's about how, some things end, and, that's natural part of life,
I heard that one of the things was that he thought that he wasn't going to live very long. Is that true? That he
Yeah. He had just he had gotten diagnosed with a regular heartbeat or something, something with his heart, and so he takes medication, still does to this day, and but the odd thing is, my brother has the same condition. My brother Joe.
Mhm.
So they have to be careful.
Yeah, for sure.
But so that definitely inspired him. Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
and then that song's lyrics have been misinterpreted by everybody, and then people accept them as their own as well. People take their own meaning. I know he's had to explain it for years. Romeo and Juliet, and that it's not a pro-suicide song.
Oh no, not at all. I mean, and you wouldn't ever get that unless you really wanted to, but because there's nothing about, taking your life there. It's more like, when the curtain, when the guy appears, the curtain and the candle blows out and the curtains, part, he and the lover is there and he's taking his love, to the hereafter, I guess,
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
it's people are always going to say what they want, see what they want, and sometimes, obviously, a little controversy is not so bad. That song is the gift that's going to keep on giving in your life for quite some time, and then it becomes, goth kids later will love it, and then every horror movie. I'm wearing Halloween today, but I think a lot of people. Probably the first time I heard it is in the Halloween movie. And then later, Stephen King, The Stand, even much later, Scream. It's just song lives forever. And of course, what I'm going to ask you, because there's probably not an interview you can do without talking about it. And your podcast, your YouTube, you have your own show where you interview people. I have the link in the description. It's really fun, and it's called Most Cowbell.
right.
And it's a great title. And so this you are synonymous with the cowbell. First thing I got to say is, if you have a website, albertbouchard.net, which has all kinds of great things about your career and links. What is missing, Albert, is a merchandising opportunity. You need to have signed cowbells autographed cowbell. I want to be the first one to have it too, but that is what is missing because people you are so associated with it. But the cowbell almost didn't happen, and I think that people also hear more cowbell than is actually there, and so there's nobody better to ask than you. For those who might not know, we're talking about the famous Saturday Night Live sketch where Christopher Walken plays Bruce Dickinson, who is a real person, decides that you need more cowbell. He has a fever. Yeah. The only prescription is more cowbell. Now, people were trying to take your credit for the cowbell, but there's witnesses who watched you play it, including your brother who was in the studio at the time. So you record Don't Fear the Reaper, I believe 3 or 4 times. You tell me, when did you decide, or someone decide, you needed more cowbell?
Well, okay, so here is exactly what happened. And this is as I remember, and my brother Joe remembers it the same way. So I think that it's probably what happens. I've had, some disagreements with David Lucas because David thought that he played the cowbell. Now, I will say this. David was so we had 3 producers for our first record: David Lucas, Murray Krugman, and Sandy Pearlman. So the 3 of them produced it together. They had a lot of arguments. And then the other 2 records, Tyranny and Mutation, Secret Treaties, there was just Murray Krugman and Sandy Pearlman. They got rid of David Lucas. David Lucas is a jingle producer. He was very busy anyway, so he didn't care that much. It didn't, it was like, oh, they're not using me. But when we had the single, we're like, we want to make sure that this does not get screwed up, because we never had a song that sounded anything like a single. So we want to make sure that we don't mess it up. And so we talked them into letting David come back. And so he was the producer who said, I want some cowbell on this track. And what happened was he had put on, one day when most of us weren't there. My brother Joe was there, but he was the only one from the band, and David Lucas, and they had Randy Brecker come and play trumpet on it. Mm-hmm. And actually, I think they had the Brecker brothers come in, and Michael Brecker, he put saxophone on True Confessions, and then his brother played trumpet on Reaper during where the guitar break is, so and Donald had already done the guitar break, but they were thinking about taking that out and putting this trumpet thing in there. Mm-hmm. So, or maybe having it at the same time with different, one on each side. I don't know exactly how it was going to be, but when the rest of the band heard it, we did not like Randy's part. I mean, he's an amazing player, one of the best, but it just didn't fit that song. And so we were like, take it off, erase it. And so I said, well, listen, if we have an extra track, I have an idea for a triangle part. Mm-hmm. Middle, same place where the trumpet solo was, where the triangle would play on the last beat of the little riff. So it'd be like boom, 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 ding, boom, 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 ding, boom, 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 ding. That's what I wanted to do. And so David Lucas said, okay, you can do that, but I'd like you to play cowbell in the verses. I'm like, cowbell? Really? He's like, yeah. I said, you think that the beat isn't steady enough? He goes, no, it's plenty steady. I just want to hear that quarter note beat, that pulse. I want something to, and I don't want a click track, So we said, okay, I'll try it. So he said, you go out, and I already was out in the studio with the triangle. So he said, well, just go over to my box he always had this big box of percussion stuff. So go over to my box, grab that little cowbell, the little one, not the big one. So I get the little cha-cha cowbell. It's like like that big, maybe 5 inches. And I'm playing it with a drumstick. And we stopped after the first verse. And I said, David, it's sounding weird out here to me. I mean, how's it sounding there to you? And Donald gets on and says, Albert, I don't like it. I don't think we should put this on here. And David's like, no, it'll work. You just got to put some tape on the cowbell. Just tape it up. It's too ringy. So I take, I got some gaff tape, put it on there. I play it with the stick, bing, 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 right? And I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't sound right to me. Still doesn't sound right. And Don's like, it's better. It's better. I said, what about if I play it with like a timpani mallet? And so they said, okay. So I get a timpani mallet out. I always have them to, the rolls on the cymbals, Anyway, so I play it with a timpani mallet and I'm like, okay, this kind of fitting into the track now. And Don's like, I love it. I love it. Play it throughout the song. I said, well, can we just do one pass? And he says, you know what? I want to put, if it's okay, I want to put a vibra slap at the end of the guitars, the guitar solo, where it goes, bah, bah, bah. So David said, okay, you go out there and I'm going to come out and I'm going to play a Wiro. I'm like, Wiro? Oh my God. What? Okay, whatever. So we went out.
This could have went, Albert, this could have went a whole different direction. It could be more triangle, could have been the slogan, more Wiro. I don't even know what that is. That could have been the slogan.
The Wiro is that thing with the ridges on it that you scrape.
Oh, okay.
So
I think the Stones use that or something.
Yeah. And it is in Don't Fear the Reaper. If you listen right before the second verse, in that little space there's a Wiro. Okay. And the vibra slap is in the guitar solo. It's all there, and we did it all in one take. 3 of us on one mic. So, yeah, and that's how that happened. So
it's amazing, and what's interesting about the sketch on Saturday Night Live is that it's pretty realistic. It's not how. I don't know who wrote it, and I don't know how they knew. Maybe they heard the story told somewhere and said this would be a really funny moment.
I never told the story to anybody because nobody realized there was a cowbell on there. When I first saw the thing, and I found out subsequently, the skit was written by Will Ferrell, and he tried it a few times, and they didn't think it was funny, and so he was getting. The cast didn't think it was funny, and they run through the whole show on Friday. So that's how it works with Saturday Night Live. They rehearse the whole show without an audience, with just the cast and the crew. And they didn't feel like it was funny. So right before the skit was supposed to happen on Saturday Night Live, Will Ferrell says to one of the girls, hey, give me your top, man. I think it'll fit me. And he puts it on and it's like way too small. And that, I think, was the thing that convinced everybody that, this is funny. And then, of course, they got totally into the role, and everybody did a great job. So and it became history. Yeah. So I call my show Most Cowbell because I was just starting to work on it when these friends of mine from Atlanta. I played a gig upstate New York with it was one of these old all these famous groups from long ago,
like a package thing, like a revival thing.
So, and I was playing with Mike Panera, from what was it, The Image and Iron Butterfly, and he played with Alice Cooper for a while, but anyway, so I was playing with him, and he had a thing backing up Mark Lindsay from Paul Revere and the Raiders, and we also on the bill was Joey Molland from Badfinger, and anyway, there was all these people there, and the association, Ambrosia, and the drummer from Ambrosia said, "You got to check out these guys from Atlanta. They're playing in New York City, next weekend. I'll get you a pass if you want to go see them." I said, "What's the name?" And he said the Yacht Rock Review. I'm like, "No, but what's their name? I know what that's." No, that's their name. So I went to see them, and they were great, and we became friends, and it turned out the guitar player was in a Plasmatics tribute group before.
How wild. Yeah, what a strange world.
So, and I said, "Oh, well, I made a record with Richie Stotts, and they're like, "Really?" Yeah. So this is many years ago. But anyway, so we became friends. And the next time they came to New York, they said, "Hey, we worked up Don't Fear the Reaper. We want you to come and play cowbell on it," So I did that, and when they were introducing me, they went, "I'm sure all you guys have heard this expression, more cowbell. We got the guy who is not more cowbell. He is the most cowbell." And I thought it was so funny. So I said, "Oh, that's got to be my vlog." And so they were like the second episode was my hanging out with them and talking about the gig and little shots of me playing with them.
How funny. Yeah, I recommend people watch it. The link is below because Albert has so many stories to tell. I'm going to get a couple more, but I can't keep them all day. But the cowbell thing, of course, it's big. You would have had no idea when you played that silly cowbell that this was going to happen. Most people.
I thought when I was a kid, I used to have like, delusions of grandeur that I'd have a hit song on the radio. I'd be able to hear my song and, that I might be able to make a living as a musician. Those were things that occurred to me.
And well, you did those things, but you're the king of the cowbell. You didn't know. Yeah.
No way would I have thought that I could be part of a sociological phenomenon.
And that people of all ages are still learning and still saying it, and it's a bumper sticker on everybody's car.
I run, I love to run, and I belong to the New York Road Runners Club, and I do the marathon, whenever I can. So I'm going to do it this year, God willing.
Yeah. You stay in great shape.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, I don't do it to stay in shape because I truly believe that running marathons, especially, it's not healthy. It's, yes, exercise is good, but sometimes too much exercise, look at just last week, a young lady, well, she was 40 years old, but she died after the marathon. She had some sort of.
And that happens fairly often. And if you do have something undiagnosed, sometimes putting your body through a marathon can bring it out.
Yeah. Well, I don't know exactly what happened with her, but I don't do it for health. I do it for mental health, actually, because when I run, it calms me down and I can focus on things. I get so many great ideas for songs or arrangements or just problems that I say. When I was a teacher, I was the last 3 years that I worked there, I was the union representative and also the dean. And those two jobs there was always these problems that I had to deal with, whether, personalities of, especially when you get teachers against teachers, that's sticky, it's like, you're trying to make a nice work environment, for everybody. And as a union rep, you're supposed to represent everybody equally, so, and not have favorites. So I would try and work out in my mind how I'm going to handle these situations while I was running. And when I'm making these Imaginos records, most of my ideas about arrangements come from running.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I walked a marathon. I didn't run. I walked. It took a long time. I feel like I'm still walking, but it's the one sport where you're by yourself and you can have time to think, and you have these thoughts, and the more you walk, the more the thoughts sometimes get stranger, and writing music or lyrics, ideas come to you when you're by yourself out and about. And so I completely understand what you're saying. And New York has that special thing as well. You know, you put some headphones on or something and you go out, and it's your time to be creative without being disturbed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you get disturbed when, like
Crap it on the corner.
I like to run on the Cherry Walk. I don't know if you know where that is. It's like on the west side, right on the Hudson, and there's all these cherry trees, and it's a space. It's about, I don't know, maybe 8 feet wide at the most, and so, but you have to share it with the bicycles. And sometimes these people come and they're going so fast, and they're in your lane and they're not paying any attention, and you're like, so that would blow my high. That would definitely blow my high, when I have to come confrontation with the bicycle or something. But yeah, I'm never lonely. I don't think I've ever, I used to read this. There was this book, or maybe it was a movie, I don't remember, called The Loneliness of the Long Distance Runner. I'm never lonely when I run. Never. I have my thoughts.
Yeah, well, it's the time where you're with yourself, and thoughts that you have time to use them. Okay, so I'm going to speed this up because I want to talk about the Dictators a little bit also, but I want to make sure that everybody, that you can go to Albert's website and you can go to his YouTube in the links, and you can hear a lot of these stories. I know people want to hear Burning for You, Godzilla, all these stories. There's a lot to talk about. I do have to ask, because it's you leave Blue Oyster Cult in 1981, which is kind of a loose thing. The band is obviously doing very well. What is the I've heard a million different stories, but what is the reason that you left the first time?
Well, I think that after we made Fire of Unknown Origin record, I worked very hard on that record, probably harder than any other record. And not only did I work hard, but Martin Birch had said to me, I need somebody from the band with me at all times in the studio. And Eric and Donald have already said they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't be able to, they'll come in and do their part, and then they're going to go home and leave me to do whatever, and he said, no, I don't want that. I want somebody in the band to be with me at all the time. And if you could do it, then I will produce this record. If you can't do it, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. And that's a big deal. Martin Birch, obviously a legendary producer to have.
We loved what he did on Cultosaurus Erectus. And so I felt like I had to do it, otherwise. So I was there for 3 months that we made that record. I was there every day. Sometimes I didn't go home. I would just sleep in the studio on a blanket or something. And
what was the studio?
It was called Kingdom Sound. It was in Syosset.
Okay.
It's not far from Hicksville. So, but anyway, it was in like an industrial park. It was not anything great. It was not the record plant or the power station or anything like that. It was just a little studio. It was pretty funky. But they had a wall of gear. So they had a lot of stuff, and Martin really knew how to use it. I learned a lot, just hanging out with him for that whole thing. And he was like, you work so hard on this, you should get assistant producer. And I said, okay, that's cool. And then when it came time for the record to come out, he's like, oh, my manager says I can't do that. It's not in the terms of my contract, and it'd be setting a bad precedent. So I said, okay, whatever, but afterwards, I felt like the band did not appreciate the sacrifice that I made for them. They felt like I was doing it just for me, which I was doing it for me, but I was also doing, if one of them had volunteered to do it, I wouldn't have had to do it. I could have gone off and done whatever I wanted to do, but I had to be there. And so I was resentful that they didn't seem to appreciate me, especially, when we ended up having a hit on it, and it was like, this is, I mean, we could have been a one-hit wonder if I didn't do that, so, and I didn't want that. I wanted, the legacy of the band to be more than that, more than just Don't Fear the Reappear. So, so anyway, I think that that was really what precipitated this whole. I had a kind of a freak out in England, where I smashed a car with a 2x4.
That's a freak out.
Yeah, and they how it was presented to me was, we think you need to take some time off to get your head together. And maybe it's a cry for help because you didn't get any time off. So now you can take the time off, and we're going to have somebody else play drums. And I'm like, okay. And then, after that tour was over and they're back home and stuff, I was like, okay, I think I'm good. And they're like, that's good. I said, well, when do you want me to come back? They're like, oh no, we're happy with Rick Downey, so you're not coming back. I'm like, oh, well, that's not what you said before. And they're like, well, that was before. So that turned into a sort of like when I dropped out of college. It took another 20 years before I played with them again.
Well, but not completely, because they brought you back in '85 for a minute.
Oh yeah,
and Albert returns, and I think that you thought you were back in the band.
Yes, that's totally true. I forgot about that. Yeah, that was a little. But what happened was, Rick Downey had quit because they were in the middle of making the record, and they loved what Tommy Price did on my record, so they wanted that same kind of drum thing. So they got Tommy for their record, which it's kind of funny because I listened to their record and I listened to Imagine Us, and I think, well, Tommy sounded different with me. Maybe it's because I knew how to give him a drum part that would make him shine. Like I would write drum parts for myself that would make me sound good. I don't think that I'm, that is my, that's probably my strongest quality, is arranging for drums.
Yeah.
I know how to do that. And, and so they didn't have me there. If they wanted to get the sound that they had on Imagine Us for, what was it? Club Ninja. Mm-hmm. If they wanted that sound, they had to get me to work with Tommy, but they didn't. So anyway, so Rick Downey quit because he didn't like that they were getting Tommy. If they'd had me work with Rick Downey, I could have made him sound great. But they
probably should have just had you play it. Tommy Price, obviously best known for Joan Jett and the Blackhearts later and things like that. Right. Well, they probably should have just had you back to play.
They could have done that too, and then I wouldn't have had to teach anybody anything. But, I think that they know now. They know now my strength as an arranger.
Well, what happened in '85 that you end up touring for a little bit with them?
Well, Rick Downey quit, and Tommy Price was playing with Joan by then. Mm-hmm. So, or he was going to play with Joan, I guess, or something. I don't know. He had a gig, so he couldn't do it, and he didn't want to do it. He's like, I can't learn all these old songs. They had like 2 days. They had like one practice. That's all they could do. One practice before the tour. So I went.
These aren't easy songs. These are not learning, standard rock tunes.
I learned.
You've got some pretty crazy arrangements.
A couple songs from Revolution by Night, and I learned 3 songs that were going to be on Club Ninja, and we went out and toured. But it was not a good experience for me because I got to see how it felt to be the hired hand rather than, the arranger, the equal partner.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't give me a mic. They wouldn't let me sing. They didn't want me saying anything to the audience. So I made sure I was obnoxious. I went up at the end of the set. I would go up to the front of the stage and say something to the audience before they turned the mic off. But I was mad. I was like, this is, after all this, and that's how I get treated. So I felt that disrespected, and so they didn't ask me to come back, and I didn't ask to be back either, because I felt like you know what, I don't need this crap.
Yeah, there's definitely some hard feelings. I want to wrap up.
I see a lot of people write stuff about, like, I'm reading Little Steven, and he's like, it's the only thing I know how to do is be in a band, and I think that's, maybe there's something noble about saying that, or like, what was the guy's name? The guy with Q Prime.
Cliff Bernstein?
Yeah. Cliff Bernstein. So he would say, I want a band that, if they weren't playing in the band, they'd be pumping gas. Yeah. I'm like, well, that's not me. I went to college. I have a million skills. I can fix anything. I can build anything.
Just not very good at selling weed, but
no, that I cannot do. I'm not a good pot dealer. That would, and I've tried to grow it too. I suck at that too. Well, no, there's certain things I can't do, but I love to cook. I love to, all these things. I like to build things and I build instruments and stuff. And so anyway, I'm not that kind of guy that if I wasn't playing music, I would, I'd be nowhere. I would probably be making good money, and, I'd probably be an engineer, maybe work with computers, I mean, that's what I was going to do in the first place. But, I felt that, I was probably better at music than engineering. So.
Were over those years, were you ever bitter or angry? I mean, Blue Oyster Cult's biggest success did happen while you were in the band. But were there ever years where they're on the road where you were mad? I mean, you did appear with the band, like you said, 20 years later, and I think you're all friendly now, right?
Oh yeah. No, it's. I mean, and I never wanted to spend extra energy being mad or resentful or anything like that, because really, you look at what happened. I mean, I realized all my dreams as a kid in this band, so why should I, I mean, there was a while where I felt like they were not being fair to me about the money. Mm-hmm. And we went through some hard times about that. But once that got resolved, when that was like, 25 years ago, once that was resolved, everything was pretty good. I mean, it was much easier to let go of all that. And then, I think that it was harder for them to feel normal around me. Mm-hmm. That took a long time, because I feel like they felt like I think they felt like I made them fire me, and maybe there's something to that, but it never felt like that to me. It was not my.
It's great that you have this sort of closure in a sense with them, because obviously Sandy Pearlman has passed, Alan Lanier has passed, mm-hmm. and so no one's getting younger. The world has been crazy, obviously. So to know that, we made some great music together. We did some great things. You have your own life and your own projects. I'd have to have you back to talk about it. I love a Blue Coupe. with Dennis Dunaway, Alice Cooper music, Blue Oyster Cult together, which is great. And then Imaginos, which we could talk about for hours because it's a trilogy, and the third one is on the way. There's more information on your website about it. This is great music. It also becomes a Blue Oyster Cult album, the first one. So we'd have to have you back to talk about those things because you didn't just say, okay, well, I'm not in Blue Oyster Cult, I'm done. No, you didn't start pumping gas. You worked. You continued to make music, and any chance that you will play with Blue Oyster Cult in the near future again?
I have been hanging out with Eric Bloom a bit, and he says yes, but and I'm not going to press it because Lord knows I have so much on my plate right now. I'm working on this new Dictators record, as you mentioned, well, we were supposed to do gigs this year, but we've decided that, we haven't really totally decided. Andy's like, I don't know, maybe we should play acoustic gigs. And everybody's like, acoustic gigs for the Dictators? Okay, it could work. It could work, and it would be fun and low key. But I think you've got two new guys in the group. Now we can go out and be like a Dictators cover band, with some of the original guys, or we could make a new record. I love making records, and I have ideas for Dictator songs. And the other new guy, Keith Roth, who's taking Scott's place, he's got lots of ideas. And so the two of us, we really want to make a record. And I think we've talked Andy into it. So now we're meeting every week. Each week we bring in a new song, so that, between Keith and me, that's 2 songs a week, and Ross has stuff too. So we have a bunch of new songs that we're working on and planning on recording it later this summer. All right.
Well, I want to point out to people who might be new to the world of Dictators. Maybe if you're a Blue Oyster Cult fan, you weren't a punk fan, or who knows. But so Dictators, Andy Chernoff is literally getting the band back together. Ross the boss. Ross was on the show. We talked a lot about the reunion. Scott Kempner, the guitar player, though, he is suffering from dementia now. He did start the project, but unfortunately, it's moving along fast. So it's very sad that he's not involved. And so you guys had to get other guys. Let's get the band back together. It's very cool and fun. Is a lyric in the song, I'm paraphrasing, it's great. We're senior citizens and we still don't give a damn. It's the great reunion song. We might be a little older, but we could still do it. And it sounds like the classic Dictators vibe. Andy doesn't get along with Dick Manitoba, who was also part of those old records, and so this is back to the way the Dictators began without him.
Before he was in the band,
yeah. And so I think it sounds it's great. I would listen. I'm selfish. I want you guys to play tomorrow, and I want to go see it. I want to hear the hits, and I'll wait for a record. But I'm sure I'll love a record too. But I'm also selfish. I got to go to this thing called the M3 Music Festival. And Blue Oyster Cult happens to be on the bill. I thought it was a little surprising. Those guys need to bring you to Maryland so I can see it. It's my own selfish.
You're the second person to say that.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's a great place for it.
I called up the manager yesterday. I said, "What's the deal with this M3 thing?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know. It's all these bands." And I said, "Well, they're talking about some sort of presentation, with that involves me." And he goes, "Oh, well, send me the email." So I sent it to him, and he's like, "Okay, I'll deal with it." So I don't know. Maybe I'll be there. We'll meet managing.
I'm tour managing a guy named Stephen Piercy, who's the singer for the band Rat.
I know him. Yeah.
And he's a big fan of yours. He was excited. When I tell him who's on the show, it's usually like, yeah, that guy or this guy. But when I told him he was very excited. He's a fan. But anyway, he goes on right before Blue Oyster Cult, and And so I, my own selfish way, I want to see a little bit of a reunion and get my cowbell on. But
I mean, I'm not going to say it's definitely happening, but I've heard there is talk.
all right, that's good. You heard it here first. It could happen.
I heard it here second.
Maryland is only I don't know 3 hours, right?
I would fly anywhere if they want me to play, and I can do it. I mean, for me, if I say I'm going to do something, even if I have to give up a gig with Blue Oyster Cult, I'm going to do whatever I said I was going to do. So, if humanly possible. So, but yeah, I'm not working May 7th. I am free that day, and I'll make sure that I'm not working that day just in case.
Keep it open. Yeah, please.
Keep it open. Yeah.
Keep it open. It could be great. The fans love it. People really love to see that history.
I'd love to see this guys. I haven't seen him now. It was last year I made a video with him. No, 2 years ago. 2 years ago I made a video with him, and I think that's the last time I spent time with any of them. I know that I'm getting together with the drummer probably before May 7th, Jules Rodino, and we're doing a double drum thing on the new record, on the Imaginos 3 record. So we have
cool.
It's a triple drum because I have a drummer in my band who's played on the basic track, and now Jules and I are going to add percussion. We're going to add tom-toms. And maybe
more tom-tom. That could, yeah, it sounds better than more triangle.
Yeah.
Albert, it's a pleasure to talk to you. You've got so many great stories. We probably just scratched the surface. You have a great attitude about it. I talk to people every day about the music business, and you have some people who are very bitter or scorn or hate their bandmates, and
Yeah.
You have a great attitude. Life is short. I think we've got to enjoy these things.
I feel sorry for those guys, really, I do. But and some of them are people that I've always looked up to, and they are bitter, and it's like, it's too bad, It's, I don't know, I feel sort of Buddhist about the whole thing.
It's not a bad way to be.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for spending your afternoon with me. And I'm hoping that I'm going to see you sooner than later. I'm hoping you'll come back and we'll talk some Dictators with a new album and things like that when the time comes. I want to make sure everybody checks out albertbouchard.net, his website, because everything is on there, links. And also we'll have his YouTube channel. I enjoyed the unboxing video. Your unboxing video is hysterical. Everyone loves these unboxing videos. I'll give you a spoiler alert. He buys a product, a pedal board, and the case that it comes in, but you only bought the case, and so your big unboxing video is spoiled by you opening the case. It's great. You handle it great, and then you answer fans' questions, and it doesn't matter how deep, because these Blue Oyster Cult fans can get pretty deep. So I recommend you guys check it out. Link is in the description. Albert, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. It's been really great interview.
Thank you. I appreciate that.